Hello everyone, welcome live to 3Y TV tonight's broadcast of the National Sim Racing Association's Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series from the beautiful Daytona International Speedway for the Stay Tuned Sports 250 here at the racetrack that is known as the World Center of Racing. Of course, the Super Speedway Daytona International Speedway, very much famed in NASCAR as well as the National Sim Racing Association. I am Peter Short, and alongside me for the 2021 B Series is none other than Drew Eisenman. Drew, great to be back up here in the booth. We got race trucks out there on the racetrack and 250 miles between us and the checkered flag tonight.
Yeah, it's always exciting to see Daytona. Typically, that either means you're about halfway through the season or, like we are here tonight, at the start of a brand new season. It's one of my favorite traditions, even though, sometimes Daytona giveth, sometimes Daytona taketh away, but it's always an exciting place to be at. It's always so cool to be here at Daytona. One of those tracks, for me, in North America, Indy and Daytona are on their own as far as prestige, and just being able to win a race at a place like Daytona is something that every driver wants to check off of their kind of to-do list, and one driver will be able to do that tonight. And Peter, we got a bunch of new faces, so I have a feeling it's going to be somebody new that we haven't seen win here before.
Yeah, if you look up at the top of the screen, there are a lot of new names that we have not seen in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. Of course, at the end of last season, new rules in effect this season, and one of those new rules is the fact that we no longer have stage breaks. We also have an I rating limit. Andrew, that made some of the drivers last season ineligible to race this season, so that is one of the reasons why we have seen such a shakeup here in the entry list here tonight to start off the season. But nonetheless, we expect to see a great show here tonight. Jeff Price in the 14 machine, fastest so far in practice, as we only have about 34 seconds left. As we see, looks like that was Jeffrey Johnson Jr. getting a little bit pit practice in here. Well, maybe no pit practice because he came up well short there. But I was going to mention here, Drew, last night on 3Y TV, the National Sim Racing Association in the Beer Street Journal Grand National Series, big accident getting to pit road. I'm curious to know if these drivers have been practicing getting to pit road after last night's mishap.
Yeah, I can attest firsthand to the mishaps that happened last night. It's one of those things that I don't think a lot of drivers think about is practicing getting on, and more so getting off, less so during practice, because each time, each setup is a little different on where you need to find that brake marker to really, wail on those brakes and get it woed down to come onto pit road. And when you have differentials in that, when you have guys that haven't practiced and are a little too conservative, and you have guys that haven't practiced and are too aggressive, and then you have the guys that know what they're doing, when those three clash, you typically have incidents like we saw last night. And unfortunately, that catches a lot of guys out that did practice and did work towards that, and then kind of, breaks apart the field if there's not a caution like we saw. Hopefully that doesn't happen here tonight, but it certainly could be a big factor in this race as now we get well and truly into qualifying with about 4.5 minutes left. And Peter, I'm interested to see, like last night, is that Highline going to come into play? I don't think it played much of a difference last night, but do you think it'll play much of a difference with these trucks here tonight?
Well, we know these trucks are definitely much boxier than the Grand National cars. Those things just get through the air just a little bit better. So I'm hoping that outside line does come in just a little bit better than what we saw last night. It took about 4, 5, 6 trucks Grand National cars last night, the Xfinity cars, if you're more familiar with that term, to really get that high line working. And really, if the inside line and the outside line had equal numbers, they were not doing it on the high line. Hopefully we can see that high line working a little bit better here tonight. There's TJ Buck in a Bucky's number 84 machine. Goes with the name. There's Garrett Gleason in the number 7 out there on the racetrack, his Chevy Silverado. Tristan Maher in the number 17 out there on the racetrack, starting his first time lap. Not a whole lot of drivers out there on the racetrack right now here, Drew. About 50-50, I would say, similar to what we saw last night here on the channel.
Yeah, and, I think a lot of guys that don't qualify have this mindset, well, if I don't qualify, I'll start towards the back. Well, if half the field doesn't qualify, you might start in the middle of the pack exactly where you don't want to be. So I'm always of the mindset that you go out there, you try to get the pole, maybe you can control the race. If you do a good job, you'll finish up in the top 5 or you'll qualify up in the top 5, and then that'll just set you up well for the race. worst case scenario, you can always fall back. That's always an option. It's much harder when there's a mass of trucks like we're going to have here tonight and you qualify in the back. If you want to get up front, you're going to put yourself at a lot of risk, potential hazards, wrecks and stuff, trying to get through that big old mass of trucks that we're going to have towards the middle. So I'm always a fan of qualifying here tonight. And right now, all the way from 52.477s in Mike Aiello in that number 74 truck, 87 to Chip Hansen, the slowest first lap at a 54.113. And we'll see with these second laps. I'm really fascinated to see what trucks do better on that second lap, if it's the high lane, if it's the low line. We will find out with the 74, who was definitely quickest on his first lap, a 52.477. And that 74 was awful quick last night in qualifying as well.
Yeah, Mike Aiello last night, very, very fast in the number 74 truck, and showing it again that he knows how to get around Daytona International Speedway. They're just going below the yellow line, going across the start-finish line. Jordan Scheffler just finished his first time lap. He's going to jump up to third, so there seems to be a lot of pace in the number 13 truck here tonight. But Aiello and Kessler, your front row as it currently stands. Philip Scott has just jumped off the racetrack. He was there. Monty Glover doing the same thing. William Kerwin doing the same thing. Man, I just got three all of a sudden there pop off the racetrack. I was hoping to show you some of their new schemes here for the 2021 B season in the National Sim Racing Association Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. There is Adam Dama, the U.S. Army Esports racing machine, coming down on to pit road to get in that pit road practice and doing a good job there on that number 82 truck. Brian Kaufman out there in the 01. And I'll tell you what, Drew, this car right here kind of gives me the... you remember the Batman Forever scheme that Bill Elliott ran back in the day? That's what that scheme kind of gives me the vibes of. So that 01 of Brian Kaufman currently inside the top 5 here as qualifying ticks on. Just 44 seconds left or so before we pick up, we give out the first Craig Setup Shop Pole Award for the season.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of the first season of the British American racing team when they ran the split Lucky Stripe and 777 scheme that FIA did not like. It's like that, but Gravedigger version is kind of how I look at that scheme, Peter. Pretty cool look for that 01 machine. That number 25 that we're looking at right now, Randy Perdue, a Dale Earnhardt scheme. Nice looking number 25 right there. Qualifying P4 thus far, as now we're looking at that number 1 of Jason Gracias and that camouflage in purple truck, but he will not, unfortunately, be able to complete that second lap. As that's it. In qualifying, Peter, here we are about to set the field for the race.
Yeah, so what we're going to do here briefly, I believe we're just going to jump straight into the race. So we will bring up there was going to be a heat race, but that is not going to happen because we don't have enough trucks for that. We have, believe it or not, 32 entries here tonight, Drew. So let's see if we can bring up tonight's starting lineup for the Stay Tuned Sports 250 here on 3Y TV. Mike Aiello picking up the pole again here tonight. Drew very, very fast last night in his number 74, and he shows that he knows how to get it done with the trucks as well. Starting alongside him on the front row to start off the season, Nick Kessler in the number 88 machine, Jordan Scheffler and Randy Perdue on row number 2. Brian Kaufman, Travis White, row number 3, the 01 and the number 23. We know Travis White was just inches away from winning last night, running out of fuel coming to the start-finish line right here on 3Y TV in a thrilling finish. Spoilers if you were going to go back and watch that one later. Should have led off with that. Adam Dama, TJ Buck, a good qualifying run for the U.S. Army Esports Racing machine right there in the 82, and alongside him that Bucky's number 84. On row number 5 and rounding out your top 10, a couple of juniors, William Kerwin Jr. and Monty Glover Jr.
And Evan Bushbosher will be rolling off in P11. Philip Scott in that 99 machine will be rolling off to his outside. Tristan Maher in that 17 machine returning this season, starting P13. Josh Sobel, a guy we were missing last season. Glad to see him back in the number 57 machine, starting in 14th position. Colin Ullery, always really good at these super speedway restrictor plate tracks. That 62 will roll off in 15th position. Then Jeff Price in that 14 machine. Garrett Gleason and that number 7 machine will roll off 17th. Then the one of Jason Gracias in 18th. That number 38, actually not. I believe it's the actual 54 machine, that green truck that you see just to the center of your screen right now. That Stay Tuned Sports podcast machine will be rolling off in 19th position. Jeffrey Johnson Jr. in that 33 will round out your top 20.
In the 21st position here tonight, it will be Chip Hansen in the Old Guy Racing machine right there. Alongside him, John Cannizzaro Jr., Dalton Hayes, Nathan Maurer round out your top 24. Let's take you through the rest of the field here pretty quickly. Doug Milliner, Vincent Valvano, 25th and 26th. Stan Hausman, Cody Browns, 27th, 28th. Chris Darling, Doug Neal, 29th and 30th. And Justin White and Jason Shue will round out your 32 truck field here tonight at the Daytona International Speedway. Just waiting to see the green flag come out for the first time this season. And Drew, I'm sure there'll be butterflies in the stomachs of some of these drivers, as it looks like this one car up there at the top of your screen dropping back, but the pace car is going to head down pit road. We'll see whether or not we get an extra lap of pacing or not. Doesn't look like it. Green flag is in the air. We'll have to highlight what truck that was here in a little bit, but the field gets rolling nice and neatly towards turn number 1. And Drew, the season is underway.
Absolutely great to see the green flag here at Daytona. A great initial start for that number 74 machine of Mike Aiello. He will clear the outside, but I think TJ Buck's going to have quite a run down here on the backstretch. That 84 machine on that high lane carrying some good momentum as the number 23 is got a little bit of a push for him on that high lane. And Peter, yeah, that's one thing we noticed last night. That high lane really did not have a lot for that inside lane. That inside lane, if it had equal numbers, was going to prevail. I think with the nature of these trucks, I think that outside lane will be a little better tonight. It will be interesting to see if it is the equal or superior of that inside lane as that number 74 machine leads the first lap of our 2021 B season.
Yeah, Aiello converts that pole to a first lap lead. Big shout out to our friends over at Craig's Setup Shop for giving out the pole position award to Mike Aiello for the first time here tonight. If you are in the market for some iRacing setups, well, the best place to go is, of course, craigsetupshop.co.uk. Purchase them over there and use them on the racetrack, the winning strategy in iRacing. Mike Aiello, TJ Buck continuing to run side by side. And then, of course, you got the 01 of Brian Kaufman, who's converted his 5th place starting spot now up into 3rd. I think the big question is, who was that driver dropping to the back of the field? We do believe it was Nick Kessler. There is Nick in the Taz Racing Customs Chevy Silverado running in 30th. And Drew, he went from 2nd to 30th in a hurry in the Taz Racing Customs number 88. We got a couple of Taz Racing Customs machines out there here tonight. Another one of those being the number 11 of Christopher Darling. He's sporting the Ford F-150 while Kessler's running the Chevy Silverado. So we will keep the two Taz Racing Customs machines in the back of our mind here tonight. But up the front of the field, we look away for just a brief second, and TJ Buck's gotten down to the inside line in front of Mike Aiello. Can he lead his first lap of the season?
Yeah, I think that 84 is going to be able to solidify his position and lead lap number 3 here at Daytona. And one thing, Peter, that we need to mention is there is not going to be a stage break here tonight, folks. A little bit different than last season where we did at that 40% mark typically have a stage break. No stage break here tonight, so there is a very real possibility of this thing going caution-free like we saw last night here on 3Y TV. But that high lane, Peter, starting to roll a little bit as now that number 23 machine of Travis White got some momentum, didn't quite carry it down the backstretch, but that number 10 of Monty Glover trying to push that 23 to the lead.
Yeah, that outside line trying to get a run. Presumably that's how TJ Buck got to the race lead. So maybe that high line, we mentioned earlier, Drew, that it didn't work all too well last night here on 3Y TV, but it seems like here tonight with these trucks, it's working just a little bit better as the number 23 of Travis White able to stay side by side, at least for now, with TJ Buck in the Buc-ee's machine. Of course, Buc-ee's very close to where we grew up, Drew, at least where it's from, but now they're expanding across, I believe, Alabama and all the way down to Daytona Beach. It's kind of crazy that Buc-ee's started in a very small backdrop and now is growing across the entire United States. But hey, up at the front, here comes Travis White down to the inside. He's going to take the race lead going through turn number 3 and 4. And now the outside line will be led by Monty Glover.
Yeah, and interesting that the 23 then immediately jumped down, because we've seen that high lane then all of a sudden kind of, push the next guy forward, and that's what we're seeing right now with that number 10 machine. Now Monty Glover, that lead truck on that outside lane, starting to propel forward. Interesting tactic that both the 84 and the 23 did. The lane that pushed them to the lead, they abandoned, and now they're kind of suffering the consequences of that. Now, Peter, I do kind of always prefer to be on that bottom line, because if there's a big wreck, the field typically is going to slide up to the top of the track initially because of physics and whatnot, and then it'll come back down the track eventually. But at speed, they're typically going to go up the track, and you just have a much better chance of avoiding the wreck on the bottom line, especially early in these races. So I understand wanting to commit to that bottom, but that high lane seems to be quite a bit more organized right now and have more speed than that bottom. It'll be interesting to see what that number 10 machine can do as he leads lap number 6.
And look who's creeping his way up into the picture. That is the 07 third truck on the high line. That is William Kerwin Jr. Great to see William Kerwin in the William Kerwin Racing Ford F-150 out there right now. He does have Matt Cherry back behind him, and I know a lot of people tagging Matt Cherry as being the favorite to win the season championship. We'll see whether or not that holds true. Of course, he was one of the drivers making the final round of the playoffs in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series in the 2021 A season. So we'll keep our eyes on that number 54 here tonight. And as the season goes on, he has a driver behind him who's very, very fast as well. If he can make it to all the races, that is Jason Gracias. Gracias did not participate in enough races last season to be eligible for the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast playoffs, but that number 1, Drew, if he can stay out there on the racetrack and participate each and every week, he could be another driver to watch out for in that MaxGrafix Chevrolet.
Yeah, completely agree with that point about Jason Gracias. He was not, I can't think of a track that he was really lacking speed to compete. Sometimes stuff happens. Sometimes the one was put in situations that just didn't work out for him. But I don't think he really ever lacked speed to compete. As far as what was the number 5 in the 48 and the 38, he's changed numbers a few times. Now the number 54 on screen is though we got a replay queued up. Peter, what are we looking at?
We're going to see if we can figure out what happened to TJ Buck down the backstretch. Not sure if he did this on his own accord there, Drew, or what, but the Bucky's number 84 just kind of jumped up out of line. Maybe some overheating or something. We'll just look out. Yeah, just dropped all the way down to the bottom side of the racetrack, down there below the double yellow lines, and the whole field raced on by, and maybe he's thinking that the field is getting a little bit too racy, and he just wants to get some clean air on the nose. He abruptly came back up there on the racetrack. Hopefully he can stick with the lead pack as we will jump back live on board right here with TJ Buck. He's fallen all the way from 3rd back to 24th, so lost quite a bit of track position at this stage of the race, but there's a long race to go. 100 laps here tonight, 250 miles. And Drew, I know 60 laps last night kind of felt like a long one, but here tonight we're in for the long haul.
Yeah, last night in that hold on, I gotta make sure I get the name right. The Beer Street Journal Grand National Series. There we go. Caution free though, Peter. So I mean, certainly from my perspective, having been unfortunately damaged on lap 20, very long race. But I think for the viewer, that thing flew by. It was over before you could really even snap a finger. Here tonight, another 40 laps, 250 miles here at Daytona with these trucks, which is I mean, a full race for these guys in real life. So quite a long distance, though. We already are 10% through this race as that number 10 machine of Monty Glover crosses the start-finish line right about now. But Peter, this thing goes by really, really quick, and especially if we can get to this first pit stop, that's what's really going to determine how the feel of this race goes. If we get a caution and then we get more cautions and more cautions, I think we're going to have some early problems and a bunch of guys out. But I think if we get to that first caution, the first pit stop rather, and we complete that pit cycle and with no dramas going on and off on and off of pit road. I think that that's going to break the field up enough to where this thing has a decent chance of going green. Last night, we saw the fuel window at about 20 laps. What do you think we're going to see here tonight?
Yeah, I believe they're running bigger fuel tanks here, so I believe they should be able to make it to around lap number 33, maybe make it just a 2-stop race if the race was to go caution-free. We'll, of course, have to wait and see whether or not that is confirmed. But look at all these trucks whipping their way around the racetrack. Now, if you're looking towards the back of the pack, you will see there is actually a second pack. This second group of drivers back here, Drew, is led by the 971 of Nathan Maurer. He's got Justin White, Stan Hausman back there. Of course, Stan Hausman, the big standout last season, having a spectacular run in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series playoffs. In the number 39 Beer Street Journal machine right there, you see him. Also in this group, Doug Milliner, Jason Shue, Nick Kessler's in the group as well. One driver who has, or a couple of drivers who are a bit further back, there's one of them. That is the number 13 of Jordan Scheffler. Not exactly sure what has happened to him. Chip Hansen, I believe, is having connection issues. In fact, I tried to see what's happening to him, and it doesn't look like he's out there on the racetrack right now. So tough breaks, it appears, for... Ooh, John Cannizzaro there going below the double yellow line. Is the outside line with a full head of steam. Look at that, as Matt Cherry puts the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast truck out front in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast 250 in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. Say that 20 times fast. Here on 3 Wide TV, comes around to lead the lap here at Daytona.
Yeah, now on lap 14 of 100 as that number 54 machine leads here. And you brought up Matt Cherry and him being one of the favorites. I don't think there is a driver in the field that has the raw speed that Matt Cherry has displayed. To me, it's a question of consistency and the reliability behind the driver of that 54. We know he has pace, but he's definitely put himself in situations in which were kind of unnecessarily risky that could have cost him a shot at that title, but he certainly has the pace. I think if he can kind of balance that pace with risk-taking, I think he absolutely will be one of the drivers to beat his... Oh, there's contact between the 7 and the 54. A big wreck, and that's going to be our first caution.
Big accident. John Cannizzaro involved, Garrett Gleason involved, Philip Scott involved, and they're still piling in back here like a couple of lemmings. Unfortunately, getting into the side of Garrett Gleason, a bump gone wrong in the tri-oval. Caution flag number 1 out here tonight. Lots of cars involved. Drew, let's see if we can break down how this happened. Go on board. Let's see if we can see what happened here. The number 17, Tristan Maher, the 7 of Garrett Gleason, a little bit of a bump right there. Gleason gets shot down the racetrack into the side of Matt Cherry. They go bumpity, bumpity, bumpity bump with one another, and it is on from there. Look at all these cars getting involved. The number 11, Chris Darling, the 1 of Gracia, 17 of Cannizzaro. Here comes your pole sitter, Mike Aiello, getting his way on through, squeaking on past, but a little bit further back in the pack wasn't so lucky. That's the far back pack. Watch some of these drivers. There's Adam Dama trying to check up. TJ Buck getting into the number 1. Unfortunately, Philip Scott in the bright blue number 99. Look at Colin Ullery squeaking on through. That's going to be a fun on board. Doug Neal in the sim box number 77. Here comes Dalton Hayes back there in the number 47 machine, and I can't tell who that was in the number 8, just squeaking on through. Looks like that was Cody Brown. I think he was able to come to a complete halt, but unfortunately, big one, number 1 here tonight.
Yeah, and last night with those Xfinity cars, you could typically get away with a little bit of bumping through the corners. These trucks not as even, and just a little bit of an off-kilter bump between those 2 trucks on the outside line with Garrett Gleason leading that, and unfortunately that just kind of sent him into the path of that 54 machine, and then that was just going to be the result. The tri-oval is kind of the worst place for me for that stuff to happen, because you don't have the visibility that you have through the main corners. You know, these trucks have a big old spoiler on the back of them, and you just can't see through the truck in front of you, and I think that's why we saw quite a few guys get involved they're late just because they didn't know where the trucks were, because you just can't see in front of through the truck in front of you. And here we go. This will be a very telling bump right here. You see that lateral movement between the 17 and the number 7 right there. That's where that 7 gets shot to the inside, makes contact with the 54. And as it always works here at these super speedways, the guy who kind of initiates that contact makes it through clean, but the number 7 and the number 54, the two guys who had nothing really to do with that, are the ones that pay the price, along with Jason Gracias, Chris Darling. I think that was Mr. Canizaro and the number 17 machine involved, and boom, boom, boom right there with that number 8 machine. Just, they don't know where these trucks are. They know that there's a caution in front of them. And Peter, that's the one thing. You might get run over from behind if you slow down too much, but if you don't slow down enough, it's going to be a lot worse when you pound into that truck in front of you. As who are you riding on board with now?
This is Josh Sobel. You see all that madness happening, and oh man, he had to get out the way from that number 1 machine of Gracias. But the first big accident of the night has struck, and unfortunately it was right up at the front of the field. A bump gone wrong. And that will get the first caution flag of the 2021 B season here on 3 Wide TV. Let's jump back up live. As you can see right now, Tristan Maher is your race leader. Evan Bushbosher is in second. Mike Aiello in the number 74. Your pole sitter is there in third. Picked up that Craig Setup Shop pole award at the top of the show. And so far, no scratches on him as he was able to navigate through that melee. Josh Sobel also able to navigate through that melee in fourth, and Colin Ullery is in fifth. We're hearing that only Evan Bushbosher and Tristan Maher stayed out. Maher on pit road right now, so he's probably going to have to take a drive-through. He'll probably be the driver who will be deemed responsible for the first caution flag of the night anyway, so he's going to come down pit road and get a little bit extra fuel in the tank of his Chevrolet. But that just makes Evan Bushbosher the one driver still out there. You see pace truck lights have turned off, and we'll see if maybe we can get a quick word with driver of the number 7 machine, Garrett Gleason, unfortunately sitting on pit road. We'll see exactly what Garrett has to say. Garrett Gleason, Peter Short, 3 Wide TV booth. You got a copy?
Unfortunately, Peter, I do have a copy.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, it seemed like things happened very, very quick in that number 7 machine, being pushed to the race lead. You might have actually even led that lap, but all things went awry. What happened from your point of view?
I just ran out of talent, and I need to apologize to everybody that was involved in that, and especially Chris and Justin. They put so much time and effort in this league, and then you got me up front, who usually doesn't run up front, and I do that in your opening race. Inexcusable, Peter.
Well, I mean, that's just one of those things. You were getting a push from behind going into the tri-oval. I mean, usually that's a spot people don't like to bump draft. Do you think that kind of played a part in that accident?
To an extent. I expected him not to push me through the tri-oval. I thought he was going to just push me on exit and let go, but because we had so much momentum in such a run, and because we don't run together all the time, I didn't know he was going to push me there. I went up a hair, which I'm sure you guys went through the replay, and just we didn't line up, and then look what happened. I took out a lot of good trucks, so sorry, guys.
All right, well, Garrett, I'm sure we'll see you back next week. Hopefully you can get the number 7 repairing back out there on the racetrack.
Thanks, guys. Have a good broadcast, and if I'm not suspended next week, I'll definitely be there.
All right. Well, that is Garrett Gleason. I don't think he'll be getting suspended for that one by any means, Drew. That is super speedway racing to a T.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't agree with his perspective on that. I mean, I know that he would probably know he was behind the wheel, but I don't think there was much that he could do unless he has, crazy reflexes to be able to do anything about that just kind of the real bad bump that he got going into the tri-oval. Just kind of an unfortunate set of circumstances for that number 7 machine. A little too hard on himself. But I appreciate the self-accountability, but I kind of don't agree with his distribution of blame. But we are back green, and Colin Ullery, who, again, is really good at these restricted lane tracks folks. He was really, really good in the Super Speedway Series when we ran that with these trucks not too long ago. And I think that he's going to be one of those guys that we are absolutely going to have to pay attention to.
Yeah, Colin Ullery leading that high line with the 0-1 of Brian Kaufman right back behind him. Mike Aiello in the number 74 being pushed to the race lead, though, on the inside line with Evan Buschboscher behind him. Buschboscher, the one truck who has yet to pit here tonight. You can see the field has dwindled just a little bit after the first caution flag, the first incident. If you're wondering where your favorite driver is right now, we have some drivers quite a ways back in the field. You can see Jason Shue in the number 3. He's lost the lead back. We got the number 11, Christopher Darling, also heavily involved in that accident, also has lost the lead pack. We're down to just 21 trucks on the lead lap as they run right now. Nick Kessler is in the lucky dog spot. There is the Taz Racing Customs Chevy Silverado, the 88, who would be able to pick up that lucky dog if it was to happen. Monty Glover Jr. just checked on him. Looks like he's off the racetrack. Drivers involved in that incident who are off the racetrack include actually Monty Glover being one of those, Philip Scott, Doug Neal, Cody Brown, Garrett Gleason, Jason Gracias, John Cannizzaro, and Dalton Hayes in the number 47 machine. So Drew, a good chunk of race trucks involved in the first accident here tonight. Hopefully some of those trucks can get back out there on the racetrack and get repaired, because it's a long season and every point might matter at the end of the regular season before you make it to the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series Chase.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. Every point matters. Like we've seen before, you just don't know if what you're doing is in this particular race where you're running the mistakes, the decisions that you make are going to really impact the rest of the season and your ability to compete for the championship come playoff time, come chase time. And for a bunch of these guys, they're already starting off on the wrong foot. I know that Jason Gracias, John Cannizzaro, Doug Neal, Chris Darling, Nick Kessler had a ton of speed. Philip Scott is another guy that I think was looking at being a chase driver. All of those guys starting off the season having to dig themselves out of the hole that's been created through just kind of misfortune and basically all of it not their fault. The guy that kind of instigated that whole incident, he's running 9th right now. I am not trying to disproportionately blame the number 17. That stuff just happens here at restrictor plate tracks. It's a very, very small mistake that 17 made. It wasn't egregious. It certainly wasn't a mistake that should be shamed or kind of be like, wow, that was completely avoidable. No, man, that stuff happens, and that's kind of part of restrictor plate racing. But we have a ton of guys still left here, Peter. That number 74, Mike Aiello, making that outside lane work, and he is trying to take that race lead.
Yeah, that number 74 with a push with the driver we right on board with. That actually might have been a bump in the middle of turn number 3 and 4 there, as Aiello got a nudge from the number 23 of Travis Wright, who we right on board with. But at the front of the field, Brian Kaufman is your new race leader with a big push from the 62 off Colin Ullery. Now that we're starting to see maybe this field, we still have a healthy group of trucks. That is for sure. Seeing in our lead pack right now, 19 trucks all the way back to Justin White there in the number 2 Simbach Chevrolet. So you can kind of see it gets kind of strung out a little bit further back, but at least this field is quite good. As back up at the front of the field, that outside line coming roaring back, Mike Aiello and the number 23 there of Travis White. And Adam Dama in the number 82, who we saw get a little bit of rear end damage, I believe, from the number 62 of Colin Ullery. Oh, contact Buschboscher and Dama. They have a big hip check, and somehow they're able to save it there, Drew.
Yeah, a crazy moment there for those two drivers, as we'll get that replay queued up right now, as that really broke apart this main pack. as, again, that's netcode. That's not even a mistake by either of those drivers. That's just netcode is, whoa, that's some IndyCar going on for that number 28 and timing and scoring 82 by Paint Scheme Machine right there of Adam Dama as then the number 5. How is the number 54 up there, Peter? I didn't even notice that Matt Cherry is still healthy and going in that Stay Tuned Sports podcast truck. Is the 57 is as well as Josh Sobel, and the 17 way on the apron there as well. And just a whole bunch of drama going on right there.
Yeah, and we are back live, and I think something else might have just happened a little bit further back. Let's see if what I just saw was true or not, because I saw some car. Let's pause it here. It happened again around Evan Buschboscher. Let's see what Buschboscher did. Oh, Buschboscher might have been coming down pit road, and again Buschboscher and Adam Dama get together. That's a weird one. Buschboscher, again, down there on the apron. He's coming to pit road this time. I wonder there, Drew, maybe Buschboscher was thinking of coming down pit road and maybe didn't call it out, or maybe Adam Dama didn't realize that Buschboscher was coming down pit road. Let's see if we can see this right here. Here we go. This might give us an indication right here. There's plenty of gap right here between the two, and Buschboscher clearly tries to go down there onto the apron, gets on the brakes, and Dama was definitely not aware that Buschboscher was trying to head down pit road, and again, somehow, some way, they save it. So, kind of a scrappy couple of laps here at Daytona, but what this has done, as we go back live up at the front of the field, the 01 of Brian Kaufman leading a 4-truck train, then Jordan Scheffler leading the 07 of William Kerwin Jr., who's now able to suck back up to the front pack. But from right now, the 01 of Brian Kaufman back to Jeff Price in 9th. We have a top 9 breakaway, and now Buschboscher is kind of in this mix as well, as he came down pit road and very quickly left pit road. Just seeing if maybe Buschboscher might have been running low on fuel, Drew, because remember, he did not come down pit road under the one caution flag that we have had here tonight.
Yeah, it's an interesting development there, Peter, by that Buschboscher machine, the number 52. I was curious what this fuel window would be like, and I think we're seeing it's right around 30 laps, potentially, and you really want to get to that 33 threshold because that's going to really mean you're set up well for the rest of this race.
Yeah, there will be, of course, a lot more pitting that's going to happen here throughout the night as we are closing in on the 1/3 race distance here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast 250 here in the National Sim Racing Association Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. And like you said, oh, contact! The 01 goes around up the front of the field. More trucks involved. Caution flag number 2 is out. Joshua Sobel involved. And for the second time here tonight, caution flag happening at the front of the field. Drew, you don't typically see these types of accidents up at the front of the field, but here tonight, they've happened more than once. What happened here? I believe we're going to be watching the number 62, and let me see if I can get this queued up properly. Here we go. Brian Kaufman in the 01 machine, the 62. There's a nudge in the corner, and the inside line just basically all gets collected. The 01 goes around. Joshua Sobel involved. The 62 involved. Wow. Second time here tonight, right up at the front of the field. You think you're up at the front of the field and you're safe, but here tonight, that has not been the case.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a severe kind of physics reaction by that 01. Again, the driver didn't make any mistakes, but just I don't think he should have turned around like that based on the tiny bump that 62 gave him. Again, this is the problem with being in a simulated reality. Yeah, Peter, that's not a big bump for that truck to kick sideways like that. That has to be some type of net code, but yeah, I mean, there were 9 trucks in that lead pack when that happened. You just typically don't see these type of incidents occur when there's only 9 trucks involved in that pack.
Yeah, let's go on board here with William Kerwin because he had a pretty much a front row view of this melee. In his machine, he just dropped down there to the low line, did a stellar job, an absolute fantastic job of avoiding that accident because basically every single truck behind him got wadded up in that one. But that will bring the field back together. 2 big accidents here in the first half of the race here in the National Sim Racing Association Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series, but that will bring the field back together and on pit road. Mike Aiello is leading that group on pit road. There you see him. Behind him you see the number 88. We will see which of these drivers picks up the first Brookstone Animal Hospital Lucky Dog Award. I don't think we gave away one earlier, but I think we're going to give away one here, so we'll have to see who that might be picking up that Lucky Dog Award. Scanning up and down to see who it might be. It might actually even be Evan Bushbosher in the number 52 machine, believe it or not. There he is. Not getting waved around just yet, so not sure if that is true or not. Do want to mention that Christopher Darling is still out there in the number 11 machine, so he got rolling again. We saw Garrett Gleason. He's back out there rolling around in his Chevy Silverado, so they were able to patch up the number 7 right there. But Garrett Gleason, one of the few drivers able to return back out to the racetrack. He's going to just pace around there on that inside line. He will pass Philip Scott and a couple of other trucks if he can continue to stay out there on the racetrack and pick up those valuable points.
Yeah, Peter, I mean, a lot of these guys, it's never fun, right? When you get involved in these wrecks and you got to get back out there to salvage those points, but that's part of restrictor plate racing. It's part of racing in general, is making sure that, you know, you put yourself in as good a position as you can long term, despite probably, I don't know, 66.6 laps of not a lot of fun, as now we are at the 2/3 mark right around here of the 250 miles of Daytona. Sponsored by Stay Tuned Sports Podcast by Jimbo. It's just kind of one of those deals when you have a damaged truck that can pay massive dividends. I look at Chris Darling in that 11 machine, who was involved in that first caution that we saw here tonight. He stayed out, didn't retire that truck, and he has gained about 10 spots, more or less, since that caution, which is 10 points, and that can be a world of difference come playoff time as far as setting yourself up with not even necessarily being in or out, but just comfort level going into that last race.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Every point is valuable. And you know what? I think, you know how I think about it, Drew? The difference between 3rd and 4th is the same as the difference between 25th and 24th in the points tally. So when you get back out there on the racetrack to try and salvage some points, it can be the same difference as that race where you really badly wanted to finish 3rd, but you finished 4th at the end of the season. That's the type of difference it makes. Meanwhile, we got a couple of drivers trying to hustle their way to catch back up to the pack that is rolling here in the short chute between turn number 4 and the start-finish line. Pace truck going to head down pit road, and we will get our way back to green flag. How about this number 39 is Stan Hausman, who did not get a good restart. I was just about to sing praises for the number 39 BeerStreetJournal.com Ford F-150 up there, but the BeerStreetJournal.com Ford going to slide back just a little bit, see if he drops down to the low line. Indeed he does. That will leave Doug Milliner leading that high train, but just like that, Milliner is going to stay up on the high line, and Vincent Valvano going to take it 3 wide up the middle. Halfway down the backstretch, Adam Dama, who has been in the wars, kind of like the U.S. Army's been in the wars, still plugging around, though, inside the top 10 for right now. It seems like Adam Dama has just been in pretty much everything. Maybe it's the camouflage on that 82 down there at the bottom. Maybe they just can't see him.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's supposed to happen when you run camouflage, not supposed to be able to see you. So, I mean, good and also bad. effective camouflage, but also not necessarily what you want. And in racing, you want people to be able to see you. In that number 28/82 scheme, a little bit of dyslexia going on when I look at that truck and I look at timing and scoring. My brain has to correct the differences between those numbers. But we're looking at the machine right now that, Peter, quite frankly, has just been the driver in truck that has been so consistently towards the front and quick. At 74, Mike Aiello, I think, at this point, given the attrition that we've seen here tonight, would be my pick to be the guy that's going to put himself in a good position to win this race late.
Yeah, Aiello has been very, very quick. He was very quick last night. Thought he might have had the winning car, and here tonight possibly having the winning truck, but we still have lots of laps separating us and the ultimate checkered flag that's coming out. A little bit of a breakaway happening with your top 7 trucks from Tristan Maher, who is currently your race leader, back to the number 54 of Matt Cherry. And one thing I'm noticing about this Daytona Sports Ford F-150, Drew, is every time he comes down pit road, I think he gets a little bit more of that iRacing damage repaired on that truck. It's already seeming pretty racy, so hopefully he can continue to get that damage worked on and eventually get that thing back as good as it can get. You're never going to get it back to 100%, but definitely showing that it's good enough to stay with the lead pack, and if you're good enough to stay with the lead pack, you know, salvaging a top 5 would be absolutely incredible after being involved in that big accident earlier on.
Yeah, Peter, yeah, I mean, we're seeing the field reform despite the attrition, though. I mean, we're seeing, the top 14-ish trucks now. There's some lap trucks, sprinkled in there as well. But I'm kind of surprised with how well constituted this main pack is right now, given, I thought that there would only be a handful of trucks left. And, now granted, Peter, we do still have quite a ways to go. But I think there's it's going to be interesting to see how these remaining drivers at least approach the rest of this. Jordan Scheffler, a guy you mentioned, I believe, in qualifying, he has showed flashes of speed throughout our time broadcasting the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. And he's a guy that I think, especially given the recent changes to the composition of the league, I think that number 13 truck should be paid due respect when trying to figure out exactly who we should be looking for. I think that 13, especially on these intermediate tracks, which tend to dominate the schedule of a lot of the stock car world, I think the 13 is going to be really, really, really quick. I'm excited to see what he can accomplish. But some newcomers here tonight doing really well. In Mike Aiello, I know William Kerwin's not necessarily a newcomer, neither is Vincent Valvano, but those 3 drivers aren't regulars here, and in the case of that 74, a newcomer just as a whole. And I think those guys are really impressing here tonight as we're coming up on a lap truck 3 wide right there. Always a little bit of a hairy moment, but these front runners navigate that nicely.
Yeah, that was the number 77 Simbach Chevy Silverado. As you see, Nathan Maurer saying, "Hey, buddy, bye, buddy," as those are a couple of teammates, but you can see that number 77 really badly damaged. We also saw Joshua Sobel in his return to the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series right there. In fact, he was originally sponsored by the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast once upon a time, but the 57 sporting a new look here tonight. It's a very sporty look, unfortunately, with some right front damage to add a little bit of patina to his Toyota Tundra, but he's able to just stick with the lead giraffe barely. He's holding on for dear life down there in the 19th position. But up at the front of the field, new race leader William Kerwin Jr. in the 07, who went to victory lane last season in the Super Speedway Series in the National Sim Racing Association, in possibly one of the best finishes I've ever seen here on the channel at a certain Monza Oval. It was a wild finish. In fact, I think he won that race by like 17 seconds on a super speedway. I doubt he will win by 17 seconds on a super speedway here tonight, but who knows, it might happen as Kerwin goes across the line here to complete lap number 40. That is 100 miles in the books here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast 250.
Closing in on halfway, Peter, closing in on it. And about 9 trucks right here are all in the lead pack. The number 14, I guess, is closed in a little bit. The 28 is just barely holding on. I guess Jason Shu is not out of it as well, so we might have 12 trucks right here that could compete for this race win. But one thing that's really encouraging for me, Peter, is how competitive that high line is when there's not even equal trucks to that bottom lane. I think that is really encouraging come late in this race when guys want to make a move. I think that high line is going to be a very viable option.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely a lot stronger than it was last night. We've seen many passes made using that high line. All you have to do is get the right bump at the right time. I will say going into the trial is not a great time to get a bump, but and just, good heads-up driving from the car that's following. If you can get that high line worked up, get a good bump halfway down the backstretch, carry that momentum, and do exactly what was done right there by Tristan Maher. He slides down in front of William Kerwin, and the revolving conveyor belt here around Daytona continues as that outside line now led by the 23. William Kerwin says, you know what? I'm going to jump up to the high line. They're side by side coming across the line. Maher leads the 23, pushing the 07, and look at Mike Aiello Jr. there now kind of boxed in the second truck on the inside line. And Drew, how does that feel as a race car driver when you're down there and you're kind of boxed in? You don't really have anywhere to go.
I think on lap 43, it's not that big of a deal. Kind of like I mentioned earlier. I mean, I was, and a lot of guys were in a kind of a similar position, especially early last night. And on the bottom lane, on lap 43, I'm just trying to stay up there, stay in the conversation, and just kind of staying relevant. But I mean, if I'm that 74 machine, I don't have to lead every lap. In fact, I would kind of rather not. I would rather save as much fuel as I can, given the possible fuel options that we might have. It's never a bad thing to save fuel and not lose time on track. So I would honestly not rather lead all these laps and save as much fuel as possible and try to put myself in a really good position late. And then if something were to happen, if you're on that bottom lane, you have a lot more options. You can get on those brakes. You can try to duck it onto the apron, short term to try to avoid a wreck. You just have more options. That high lane, you're going, like, if a wreck happens, two rows in front of you, you're going to be in it. There's just not much you can do. There's not a lot of options on that high lane. Now, come late in that race, I think if you're on that bottom and you have a run, 3 wide is very much an option for you, especially with kind of how few trucks there are. When there's fewer trucks, there's going to be, Matt Cherry almost lost it out of 4 there, Peter. That 54 got dead sideways with that lap truck. Yeah, we got to cue that replay up, as I thought we were going to have, I believe, our 3rd caution, if I'm counting correctly on my hands. Yeah, look at that. Woo! That 54 dead sideways.
Yeah, and that's actually not the first time here tonight I've seen the number 54 of Matt Cherry have a strange wiggle. I've been noticing that every once in a while, that I'm not sure if he's having some issues with his gaming controller or gaming wheel. I don't usually race with a controller. Usually they race with a wheel. But the 54 of Matt Cherry has looked a little bit on edge here tonight and just caught that lap truck at the wrong time there, in the wrong groove. And good save, however, out of Matt Cherry to keep the Stay Tuned Sports podcast with Jimbo. I feel like I should get paid an extra dime every time I say with Jimbo. But anyway, with that number 54 truck still out there, right now he is holding on in the 9th position. But what I wanted to mention is that we got some 3 wide. We'll hold on to that thought. 3 wide with William Kerwin going up to the top side. He's going to lose a couple of spots, going to drop back in line behind Vincent Valvano. But what I wanted to mention, Drew, was a couple of these drivers back here who are kind of in the sleeper zone. Jason Shu right there in the number 3. He's just outside the top 10. Of course, running a Dale Earnhardt-inspired number 3 scheme here tonight. He is running in 11th. and just been quiet so far, minding his P's and Q's back there. Has, of course, been far enough behind to be able to slow down for the few accidents that we have had that have taken out some of the other trucks. Adam Dama, we know he's been through the battles here tonight. Stan Hausman's another one of those sleeper trucks. He's just kind of sticking around. And remember, last year, Drew, Stan got that win at Talladega. Could we see Stan Hausman punch his ticket into the chase here again this season? Justin White is another one of those sleepers in the number 2 machine. You see him right there running 14th right now. Nathan Maurer, the 971, he's in that zone. Jeffrey Johnson Jr., 16th spot. Doug Milliner, the number 6 Ford F-150, the Louisville Cardinals truck, he's right there in 18th. And then a little bit further back behind them, you have Evan Bushbosher, who is in danger of falling a lap down. But, we can't count out some of these drivers outside of the top 10 at this stage of the race, Drew. I don't want to get caught saying, where did he come from here tonight at Daytona? They're in that sleeper zone. They're playing their own strategy. I'm sure they'll work their way up to the front before the checkered flag falls.
Yeah, I agree. And I know, Peter, I am trying to deduce the language of the new championship format, and I'm struggling a little bit. Could you help describe, what drivers will be able to be eligible for the chase come that time?
Yes, so I did say maybe Stan Hausman can punch his ticket because winning is one of the way to make it into the chase. So here's the whole deal. There will be 10 chase positions this season on hand for the National Sim Racing Association Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Show. So 10 spots. Keep that in the back of your mind. Any driver who has accrued a win will be considered into the championship chase. You win and you're in. So that's bullet point number 1. Bullet point number 2. If there are more than 8 winners during the course of the regular season, the top 8 will be determined in order of number of wins, point standings, top 5, top 10, and the driver that finished highest in the regular season cutoff race. That's kind of the seeding. If there are less than 8 winners during the course of the regular season, the remaining of the top 8 without wins will be determined. So, you have 8 drivers that make their way into the chase through wins or points. Basically, that's how it goes. However, the final 2 spots in the championship chase will be determined by the highest 2 drivers in the point standings remaining. So, 10 total drivers make it in, but the top 8 will be seeded based off of the number of wins. But then if there are more than 8, only 8 make it in. So it is a little bit confusing because there are 10 spots. 8 drivers are going to be in based off of wins. And then the final 2 spots are basically drivers who are not winners, but they make it in on points. So there's still an onus on scoring points and trying to get points. If you're kind of in that realm where you might not be there with wins, but you had a great season. Basically, what they're trying to do is if you have 8 different winners, and you had one driver who finished, let's say you had 10 different winners, but the driver who scored the most points, let's say you had one driver finish second in every single race. Well, because there was more than 8 winners, the person who was highest place in points, who finished second every race, would actually still qualify. So, it's a little bit funky to kind of follow. However, you have to have more than 8 winners for it to get kind of funky. It's winning you're in, unless we get more than 8 drivers getting wins this season. So that's kind of how I read it. Maybe there will be some verbiage updates, but that is at least how I read the current championship season. So basically, if we don't have, as you see, the leaders splitting some crazy lap traffic right there, having to go 3 wide up the middle. Bushbosher going a lap down in his truck right there, the number 52. But that's kind of the name of the game this season, Drew. 8 drivers get in on wins if there's 8 different winners, and then 2 spots are reserved for drivers who, based off of points. So you could still have a win, but points become the determination factor after that point. So it can get a little bit squirrely. But that's just to make sure that we don't have one driver who's extremely consistent every week miss the playoffs or the chase in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, so kind of from what I interpret, it's the top 8 race winners, if there are 8, plus 2 wild card spots on points. Yeah,
that's a better way to put it.
Okay.
It's a much better way to put it. I'm sure everyone at home is now going, okay, light bulb's going off. Peter did a terrible job of explaining it. If you're in the chat, make sure you can say, yeah, Stay Tuned Sports saying, hey, can you repeat that, Peter, please? And I'm sure they're now, but he's like, oh yeah, Drew got it. Drew figured it out. So anyway, we thank each and every one of you joining us in the chat here tonight. Caitlin Swisher in the chat saying, let's go number 13, Jordan Scheffler, creeping his way up into the top 5. How about that? Johnny Williams saying, let's go number 17, Tristan Maher, up there inside the top 3. Garrett Gleason saying, let's go Vincent Valvano, the 00 of Vincent Valvano, actually 64 on the scoring pile and 00 on the side of the truck. He is right there inside the top 10. So we got these drivers rooting on different people. Nick Bradley, we know Bradley's rooting for Jordan Scheffler. He said that Scheffler was his teammate last season. He's always good on the super speedways. And look at Jeffrey Johnson Jr. He was in that sleeper zone as well a little while ago. And we've seen Jeffrey Johnson Jr. Have some really good runs on these super speedways before, Drew. And he's now creeping his way up into the picture by himself up to 4th. And still with a big shot down the backstretch. I'm not sure what that Ford F-150 has under the hood, but it must be a giant engine, maybe even a jet engine, because he just rocketed from about 10th up to 3rd in the backstreet.
Yeah, I mean, that's a heck of a solo effort by the number 23-33. Are my eyes deceiving me? Timing and scoring will tell me 33 machine of Jeffrey Johnson Jr. Yeah, it's just that has a finite lifespan when there's quite literally no one else working with you. But a few positions gained for that number 33 nonetheless. But I think these guys are fairly content right now, Peter. Given the fairly chaotic nature of the first half of this race, I think these guys are kind of okay with riding single file, almost Dale Jr., but on the bottom version. But what are we looking at right now with that number 99 machine?
Philip Scott, hearing that engine just let go on the number 99 machine and brought it down to the inside of the racetrack and has departed from Daytona International Speedway. We'll hopefully get to see him next week. Meanwhile, back live up at the front of the field, we got a group of drivers coming down pit road this time. Last on pit road around lap number 31. So I think this is our answer, Drew. About 26 laps on fuel for these drivers as Mike Aiello Jr. heads down into his pit box. A portion of drivers still out there on the racetrack led by Jeffrey Johnson Jr. Now you can see those are the trucks that remain your top 8 as they run. Still running around. A bunch of others now just peeling off pit road. Aiello coming off pit road, Colin Ullery back there, Jeff Price, Tristan Maher in that group, trying to see if there were any big issues on pit road. William Kerwin took tires in the 07. That might be the wrong call, as he's now in danger of losing that pack in front of him. You can see very clearly he's lost that pack in front of him. Meanwhile, as I say that, we got the next group of drivers coming down pit road right now as the 54 of Matt Cherry heads to his pit box. We got Nathan Maurer in his pit box, and Jason Shu in the 3 backing up. He missed his pit box badly. It's going to take him a while to get back into his pit stall. And Jordan Scheffler, the number 13, he was able to get into his pit box. Pit road trouble striking again here at Daytona.
I mean, so yeah, relative pit struggles. I'm really jealous of the pit entry of the field, though. This green flag pit stop cycle, as I believe that's just about everybody now on and off of pit road. That number 54 machine of Matt Cherry nailed his pit entry and accordingly has quite a gap to the machine that we're looking at previously, the number 13 machine. There you go. This number 54 was not even the leader of this group coming onto pit road. He just figured out his markers, and he might be the only one that sticks to this lead pack, as now that 74 machine kind of flies by him. I don't know if he's going to be able to stay with him, though, Peter, as these top four really nailed their pit stop that first round by.
Yeah, you can see this is on board with Matt Cherry, and you can see that field just really not formed up at all, as good old Lambert alert flashes up on my phone. I apologize about that if you could hear that in the background. But hey, Matt Cherry in that number 38, going to lock onto the back bumper of Travis White in 5th. Front 4 able to break away. Now the big question is going to be, can that front 4 start to pull away? Can they start to stretch this gap to several of the cars behind? We'll bring up the track map so you can see firsthand from a bird's eye view of just how much this field has been broken up by that green flag pit stop. A couple of the notable drivers back there who had very lengthy pit stops and times on pit road, William Kerwin and Adam Dama, both of those drivers elected to take 4 tires. Most of the field only elected to take 2, and 4 seconds here at Daytona, Drew, it's significant. 4 seconds at a lot of tracks is pretty significant, but here at Daytona, when you're whipping your way around here at 180 miles an hour, 4 seconds is an eternity.
Yeah, I mean, 1 second here at Daytona can be the difference between you maintaining the draft and losing the draft, especially when packs are this small. It'll be interesting to see, broken up, but not completely out of contact, I would say, are these groups of trucks right now. That second grouping of the 23 and 54 machines, I know that we're running on board with the 23 right now. They're certainly going to catch this pack. And I think if that happens, then that second main group, which is 5 trucks, is going to be in a little bit of trouble. You always want to have the number superiority. Ooh, but if these guys get racing side by side, that's going to pull that second pack into the battle before too long. But Peter, with these pit stops, do you think these guys can make it from here on field?
That's a big no. They cannot make it, but they can make it on one more pit stop. So we will definitely have to see these drivers come down, I believe, once more here tonight. As that last pit cycle, excuse me, we can bring this up. Their stint length here, that last time was 25 laps, Drew. So these drivers, of course, if you do the math up there at the top left, we are just at 40 laps to go, 100 miles left, and we'll make that 97 and a half miles as they go across the start-finish line this time. So there's about one more pit stop that could happen with probably about 22 laps to go, and that will get all of the drivers to the end of tonight's main event here in the National Sim Racing Association. So there is the pit strategy you see tonight out of your top 5 drivers looking just about all the same. You got, of course, that caution flag that came out around lap number 16, then another caution flag coming out on lap number 31, and we've been caution-free ever since lap number 31 here tonight at the Daytona International Speedway. But it is Aiello, your pole sitter here tonight, picked up that pole award brought to you by our friends over at craigsetupshop.co.uk. Make sure you check out Craig's Setup Shop for all of your iRacing setup needs, because I'll tell you what, Drew, they are pretty darn quick setups, that's for sure.
Yeah, I certainly agree. As somebody who is certainly not a setup savant, I will absolutely have to give them a visit. Nothing is kind of worse than, I think, especially like on the road side, right? Of having fun, enjoying yourself on those road cars, on those fairly complicated and technical road circuits, in kind of private test sessions, and then all of a sudden going into a practice session or a race session and realizing, oh, I don't have this quite as good as I thought I did, and most of that's setup. And so I think Craig's Setup Shop can absolutely help you in that aspect. I know they certainly help me. But Peter, these guys are still single file now, and they've kind of pulled everybody together at this point, right? I think we have 10 trucks right here in this main pack, from Mike Aiello to Nathan Maurer in 10th position, all relatively in contact at this point, which is, I think, what these guys really wanted. At least the guys towards the tail end. I think those top 4 would have been more than happy to settle this amongst themselves. But I'm kind of surprised. Normally, you really fracture the trucks on the lead lap when you get through these pit stops. And Peter, I think these guys have done a relatively good job of keeping in contact with each other.
Yeah, they definitely have, and I was definitely concerned that the front 4 would be able to scoot away, but we saw that front group of 4 get caught by the 23 and the 54, and now we're seeing Jeffrey Johnson Jr. We got Justin White, Nathan Maurer, and not Doug Milliner. Milliner's found another little group himself there with Stan Hausman back there, TJ Buck, Vincent Valvano. These trucks about 10 seconds or so behind your race leader, give or take. In fact, 11.6 last time at the start-finish line. And then you have to go another 13 or so seconds back to William Kerwin and Adam Dama, who are probably kicking themselves for making that 4-tire call on the first pit stop here tonight. And then you have Jason Shu, who had problems getting into his pit box. He's all by his lonesome, and you will see that there is not that big of a difference now between Jason Shu and where your race leader is on the racetrack. Mike Aiello Jr. continuing to lead. They're catching up to the back bumper here of the 47 of Dalton Hayes, who is a lapped car involved in the first accident here tonight. There we go, the Terry Labonte inspired number 47, as they get passed by your leaders. There is Josh Sobel. Unfortunately, Sobel involved in an accident here tonight. He will fall one lap, make that 2 laps down as they run right now. And I know that is not the return that Josh Sobel was hoping to have here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series.
Yeah, certainly unfortunate as Philip Scott has disconnected as well in that number 99 machine. So only 17 trucks on the lead lap out of 32 starters. And of those 17, one of them in the number 3 machine is not long for this lead lap. 43 seconds in front of our leaders. For too long, he will absolutely go a lap down. Is a little bit of a mixing up going on up here. Is that high line trying to get organized behind that number 17 of Tristan Maher. We'll see if they are able to prevail or not. Not bad numbers, though, if they can just get a little more organized at 23. That third truck on that high lane, just not quite close enough to that number 13 machine, is now the 33 bells out, and now that outside lane has some problems, or does they? English is good, folks. English are good, I guess I should say. As a little tight on exit. To me, Peter, entry and exit is the worst possible time to catch those lap trucks. That's when it really tightens up. That's kind of the limit of the grip as that banking either falls out from under you or you start to turn into it and you start to input the wheel. You just have a little less kind of maneuverability. As now that is that 17th place truck of Jason Shu, and now 16 trucks on the lead lap as 3 wide through the tri-oval. This didn't go well earlier, even in 2 wide situations, as I believe that's going to be Colin Olery, who I counted out of this race, Peter. There, I believe under our second caution, that number 62 was caught up as, the 14 almost turns to 62. How was that not a wreck? How did Colin Olery save that truck?
I don't know. I was about to say you didn't count him out there, but I think you're about to count him out again in that number 62. How on earth did he save that? That is definitely going to be one of those that we're going to have to bring up here on the 3Y TV replay. Let's put this one again in slow motion, see if we can get a good look at it on the zoomed in cam. Look at that. Here comes Jeff Price. Gets a little bit lower. There's just a little nudge right behind the scoring pylon. And O'Leary just not a lot of wheel input. You can actually see inside that number 62 machine, and as we zoom out, the 74 of Aiello almost went up into Jordan Schepler, and that could have been huge. That absolutely could have been huge, but these drivers able to save it. And then look at Matt Cherry doing the wiggles again back there in that number 54 Stay Tuned Sports Podcast F-150, but they sorted things out. But as you can tell, it split up the field just a little bit. We're back live now as they race around. Tristan Maher is your race leader. Mike Aiello Jr. in second. Colin Willery, Jeff Price in third and fourth, and Jordan Schepler rounding out your top five as they run here, coming to 30 laps to go here at Daytona. Just 75 miles left in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast 250.
Yeah, what comes to mind, Peter, seeing the trucks as they run now, given fairly dramatic turn of events, almost not quite a turn of events though, right? 62 not quite turned. I guess was turned, but was able to save it. Is look how that incident settled the entire pack down. We saw these guys getting a little racy, getting a little excited, trying to make maneuvers, and then all of a sudden that incident happens and everybody says, nope, still 30 laps to go, I'm not taking myself out with 30 to go. That is not the time to make moves, and now you're seeing them just kind of, stratify, solidify their positions, string out on that bottom line. But this is not going to be forever. That is for certain, as I think that's the 3 machine of Jason Chu. Yes, it was that they passed, that was running there on the apron. But Peter, I think these guys are biding their time until this last pit stop, and then that's where they are going to really race hard. And I think unless you're one of those tail end guys, I think if you're that like 971 machine or the 57, or even guys like Matt Cherry in that 54 machine, I think those guys are going to have to try to position themselves a little bit better, because when you're that far behind that front truck, that number 17, you have to be absolutely perfect on your pit entry and your entry into your pit box. Otherwise, you are out of this main pack. Those are the guys that are really susceptible, that I think are the guys that are going to try to advance positions before this pit stop, because they have a much, much smaller margin of error in this next round.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the time where you need to get on and off pit road without making mistakes. We call it the money stop because it might very well be the last opportunity you have to make a move that can get you into victory lane, but more so what can take you away from victory lane, that's for sure. Jason Gracias, the number 1 MaxGrafix Chevy Silverado, back out there on the racetrack. And Drew, he's right now on lap number 21, about to pass Garrett Gleason. In fact, as I said that, the position on the scoring pylon changed. He just passed Garrett. Garrett, you got to get back out there on the racetrack, buddy. Jason just passed you. But meanwhile, this is the lead pack, and they're quickly closing in on the number 1 of Gracias. Gracias is going to have to go to the high side of the racetrack. Where's he going to go? He's going to go to the middle groove, the high side. Okay, there he goes. He's going to let the leaders on by, but I think the leaders were a little bit hesitant there on where Gracias was going. He finally does yield up that position, and really, for Gracias, I mean, he doesn't have a whole lot to gain running down there on the bottom groove. He will catch up to Nick Kessler in 8 laps or so from now. Philip Scott would be the next truck to pass, but he wouldn't be able to catch Philip for a good 18 laps from now. But it is the number 17, Tristan Maher, leading Aiello, and the 62 of Colin Willery and Jordan Schepler. Again, Schepler trying to use that high line, and we've seen Schepler really favor that high line here over the last 15, 20 laps, Drew.
Hey, Peter, these guys certainly are, I think, as we kind of thought, are trying to position themselves a little bit better for this next round of pit stops. That number 13 machine, alone and unafraid on that high line. Jordan Schepler, is he going to be able to get by Willery? No, he's not. The question is, can he slot behind that number 62 machine? Peter, these windows close so quickly with that speed differential that you get by being left all alone on that high lane. If I'm that 13, I would drag my brake and try to slot in behind the number 14, because that hole will close up very quickly right there, and then that might lead him to lose a lot more spots as I think that's probably what is going to happen. As I'm kind of surprised, though, that the tail end of this group isn't being a little bit more aggressive here with just 25 laps to go.
Do you think we're seeing the calm before the storm, though, Drew? I mean, as soon as we get to probably 10 laps to go, and of course we still do have that final pit stop. And speaking of that final pit stop, the pit window is open this time by, so might we see some early takers on pit road? I'm sure a couple of these drivers have last night in the back of their heads that big kerfuffle that we had coming down to pit road that took out several of the trucks. Doesn't look like we have any takers this time, but we will bring up the graphic here in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, Drew. We saw them go 25 laps with 2 caution laps. The rule of thumb is for every caution lap you get an extra lap of green flag fuel, or at least of fuel in length, in stint length. So we are seeing possibly 4 laps from now, these drivers will be out of fuel and they will have to come down pit road. We'll see whether or not that holds true. But either way, pit stops are going to be coming here very soon for the final time here tonight in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series.
They surely will. And, just one thing that kind of sticks out to my mind is what we saw last night, which is the guys that didn't pit with the main pack were the ones that were ultimately successful. If I were these drivers, the pit window's open. They can make it from here. If I have teammates, I'm trying to come down now to avoid the chaos that is everybody else coming onto pit road. Because if we can get in and off pit road cleanly and together in the draft, we're not going to lose much, if any time, versus the guys that are trying to dodge each other, trying to get on and off pit road cleanly. Those are where real potential problems can happen, as we saw last night in the first round of pit stops. So my question is, Peter, how early do you think these guys are going to come in, and do you think they're all going to try to come in at the same time?
Well, I think that's, in my opinion, a worry, is if they all do come in at the same time. We saw what that led to last night, a lot of junked up race cars. So if I got some buddies in this pack, and granted, this field is so broken up, there aren't a whole lot of quote-unquote buddies in the same pack up in this lead pack, but maybe you are. Maybe you're on communications with your teammate. I do know a little bit further back, we got Justin White and Nathan Maurer, a couple of the Simbox trucks. They are together out there on the racetrack. We know they're going to be in communication with one another, but it's going to be one of those things, Drew, where maybe, just maybe, if you're those two drivers, I mean, 2 is kind of a hard number. As here we go, we got drivers coming down pit road this time. A good portion of them, not everyone. The 2 and the 971 did elect to stay out, like I mentioned. Oh, Colin Woolery's in the grass. That will be a penalty for the number 62, an unsafe pit entry. He's still over there in the grass, and that's going to be a big, hefty penalty for the driver of the number 62. There's 4 trucks right now in that group staying out, but only Cherry, White, and Maurer are on the lead lap. They do have Josh Sobel, the lap traffic there, kind of in between. But we'll see how this all cycles out. Aiello is taking right side tires. He's down and away. Jeff Price, the 14, down and away, as was the number 13 of Jordan Scheffler. Travis White is going to be in that group. Tristan Maher, Jeffrey Johnson Jr., and unfortunately for Colin Woolery, that penalty in the Simshot Chevrolet will potentially, barring another caution flag, potentially take Colin Woolery out of the picture for the race win here tonight. Here comes the other group: Cherry, Justin White, Nathan Maurer, and also the 47 tag-along back there of Dalton Hayes. He's on lap number 39 here tonight after being involved in an early accident. He will find his pit box. But I'm sure if you're Nathan Maurer or the number 2 of Justin White, or the 38 of Matt Cherry, you're just happy you got some extra drafting help there as they all start to get rolling back out there on the racetrack. Maurer with a great pit stop there, Drew. Looks like Justin White also with a pretty good pit stop, as the number 54 seemed to really struggle. Now we'll see the picture as these drivers get up to speed, who had a good pit stop, who didn't, as they all get back up to speed. It takes a while here at Daytona.
It sure does. And Peter, one thing that I noticed being on track last night is how much understeer there is on the apron trying to get off. I was really surprised. I know that basically every other time I've and now granted it's been a long time since I've tried to run kind of a full season of oval stuff at least. And it used to be, man, if you were too aggressive on throttle on pit exit, that thing would kick dead sideways, and you would really struggle to not lose the rear exiting pit lane. And last night I noticed that thing was just push the nose if you were too aggressive, which was kind of surprising, but I think it makes that pit exit a little bit more approachable for these guys. And I think that that's probably a contributing factor as to why we're not seeing this field spread out as much. As pit lane entry is very important, but pit lane exit is as important, if not more so, because you carry that momentum, and because I think it's a little more forward limited or front limited than rear limited, that those guys feel like they can push a little bit harder, like everybody can. And so I think it's leading to these guys stay relatively compacted and intact following these pit stops, as we're seeing now, as this whole field has essentially exited this pit cycle intact.
Yeah, barring a caution flag, we don't expect to see these trucks back on pit road for the remainder of the night, and it will be a 9-car draft up at the front of your field. 22, make that 23 seconds back behind Justin White is the 10th place driver of Doug Milliner. He's back there with TJ Buck, Stan Hausman in tow as well, I believe. But then, unfortunately, it's a ways back to Vincent Valvano. Colin Ullery in that number 62 machine, he's actually coming down the backstretch, and you can see that bright yellow and blue number 74 of Aiello not all too far behind him. So Ullery with that big mistake on pit road, Drew, unfortunately, he is in danger of falling one lap down in 14th spot. William Kerwin also in danger of going a lap down. Adam Dama is now one lap down. So we are going to have only 13 trucks on the lead lap here in a little bit. There's Vincent Valvano drafting with Jason Shue. Jason in the number 3 machine currently finds himself in 20th position. Not the night that Jason Shue wanted here at Daytona. But let's go back up to that battle for the race lead, because we're inside 50 miles, only 17 laps to go. And Drew, when is your go time here at Daytona?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last question, Peter? I didn't quite catch it.
I said, when is your go time here at Daytona? When do you start to try and get yourself in position to try and win the race? Is it as early as now with 17 laps to go, or do you think you might wait for just a little bit?
I think you have to start positioning yourself now. I think the halfway point is where you have to start positioning yourself. You can't, if you fall back, you're always running the risk of the race going green, like we've seen, aka last night, even though that was kind of a different circumstance. But if you make it competitively till lap 50 out of 100, that's when you have to start positioning yourself, because that's when pit stops really start to matter and the field starts to pull itself apart. But on with now 16 coming to 15 to go, yeah, I think you have to start at least positioning yourself now. I don't think guys like Matt Cherry, that green truck right at the end of this pack, that you can just see his roof right there, I don't think that he really has a shot right now, because now we're starting to see lines form and he's behind all of it, and he just kind of has limited options. He can either pick the low line or the high line, but either way, he's the last truck in that line. I think you had to start positioning yourself as soon as you see guys start to want to make moves. You got to try to be in the front of one of those lines. And I think, Tristan Maher real close to the quarter panel of that 13 machine. But I think that Tristan Maher has been the guy that's kind of taken the initiative, and that initiative typically gets rewarded here at Daytona, as he's got a good run down the backstretch going into 3 on lap 86. I mean, at this point, even Jeff Price, right? He's only the 4th truck on the inside line. He's going to have to force a 3 wide closer to the end of this race if he wants to have a shot to win this race. You just become boxed in by these lines so quickly here at Daytona that you really have to be ready to just seize opportunity, even on with 14 laps to go. You can't wait too late.
Yeah, and you also have to factor into the fact Drew, that we have a couple of interlopers in this front pack as well. I'm looking at William Kerwin in the Kerwin Racing Machine. I'm talking about Colin Ullery. Those drivers find themselves one lap down. They're trying to race for the lucky dog position. So they're still racing. If a caution flag was to come out, William Kerwin, at this moment in time, would find himself back on the lead lap by means of the Brookstone Animal Hospital Lucky Dog Award. So they still have something to play for, and they might also play a part in who ends up winning the race. I mean, right now, that outside line led by Tristan Maher is being pushed by a couple of those trucks that are one lap down, so that story could still be written here in the closing stages, and that might factor into the strategies. I mean, we saw last night that the couple of lap cars in the front pack that can really inhibit some drivers a little bit further back in the pack to actually try and get towards the front of the field, just because of the fact that there's more cars that you would have to get around to get up to the front. So that's something that's going to be having to go through some of these drivers' mind, although Tristan Maher got a big shot from William Kerwin, and they broke up just a little bit. I think there, Drew, Maher thought about slicing down in front of Aiello, but the door was shut pretty quickly, and he thought better of it and going to have to try again here this time.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not going to win it, even being that second truck in line on the bottom. I think if you're that 17, at least, I mean, and even that second truck on the high lane, you have more options. When you're on that bottom line, you're so boxed in. As now we're looking at this 57 machine running 17th, 2 laps down Josh Sobel. Racing that 47. I think these guys are just behind the main pack as we have some definite developments going on here, Peter, as that 17 just almost cleared that 74 going in to turn 3. But Peter, I wouldn't, even if I clear that bottom line, I wouldn't cut down to lead that bottom, because I just think that high line's going to cycle that next leader, as we've seen so many times here at Daytona. I think if that 33 truck, that last black and blue truck on that high line, if he can get up there, that high line has the advantage. As now he ducks, of course, to the inside. But I think that if Jeffrey Johnson Jr. works with that high line, they're going to have a clear advantage, and they are going to make big moves, as I think they could do it even without him, as that 17 at least pulls even to that number 74 truck, Peter, as now we are rapidly closing in on 10 to go.
Yeah, getting word that Jason Gracias has pulled off the racetrack in the number 1 machine. And like you mentioned, Drew, just 10 laps to go this time. Make it 25 miles left at Daytona in the season opener as they go across the start-finish line. Mike Aiello, who has led the most laps here tonight in that number 74 Toyota Tundra, leads yet another one. But Tristan Maher to his outside with a big push from William Kerwin. And look at the number 13, Jordan Schepler. A little bit further back, he is Nick Bradley's pick to win in that bright red number 13 machine. You can't miss it, but they're catching up to some lap traffic, and a couple of those trucks, the 00 of Vincent Valvano and the 39 of Stan Houseman, Drew, they're racing with William Kerwin and the number 62 of Colin Ullery for the Brookstone Animal Hospital Lucky Dog Award. So, the 17 of Maher goes up the racetrack, gets a big wiggle out of the back of the number 17. Not sure if there was contact there, but Maher's going to drop well back, and that outside line now completely broken up as Aiello works his way through several of the lap trucks. You can see that some of your leaders have worked their way around, so several others have not. As you see, the number 39, the Beer Street Journal machinist Stan Houseman, he's going to draw level with the 17 of Tristan Maher. So we got a couple of races to watch out for here, Drew. And of course, with the lap count winding down, the fire on the racetrack will be ramping up.
It certainly will. The intensity certainly isn't going to go down as these laps go on, as 11 trucks remain on the lead lap, 9 of which as that 978 in number 2 are a little off pace, but basically 7 lead lap trucks in this main pack with, again, as you mentioned, several interlopers, non-lead lap trucks involved in this as well. And that can be a huge, as the 23 gets turned, that's going to be a caution. The 23 involved, I can't tell the 07. It's kind of hard to tell that number, but the 23 of Travis White certainly involved, as are several others.
Yeah, and man, for Travis White, a long night here. Let's see what happened here. Goes up the racetrack to block the 62 of Colin Ullery. Just a late move out of Travis White, and unfortunately, that bump that happened there goes wrong, and he gets turned around right in front of William Kerwin. Nowhere for Kerwin to go in his machine, and that is going to change everything here at Daytona as a couple of trucks getting wadded up here in the late stages. We'll see. We'll get one more look out of that one. Let's see, Drew, if we can go on board with the number 62 of Colin Ullery, because Ullery here got such a big run going through turn number 1 that the 23 came up the racetrack. There might have been a little bit of net code there, but nothing really Ullery could have done to anticipate that, and you see it all snowballing back behind.
Yeah, I mean, that's a risk of blocking. I completely agree. When you throw that block, that's a risk that you're kind of gambling on paying off, and unfortunately for the 23 machine, especially because that wasn't a lead lap truck and Colin Ullery, who was a lap down, it's just is the juice worth the squeeze? I would certainly have argued, I mean, in hindsight, that it was not, as that 23 is now certainly going to struggle to compete for this race victory. The 33 might be okay. The 33 also might have significant required damage. It's always so hard to tell in iRacing. Sometimes you come through that and you have 3 seconds of optional. Sometimes you have 34 seconds of required. It'll be interesting to see. He's coming down pit road, that number 33 machine. And Peter, all these guys can make it, so I can't imagine that you're coming down pit road if you think your truck's fine.
Yeah, and I think Jeff Price in the number 14, the Back Channel Productions Chevrolet, he was also involved in that accident, got a piece of it. He's going to come down, try and get some damage repair. There goes the 23, Travis White. The number 6, Doug Milliner, is going to come down pit road. He was a little bit further back, but still on the lead lap in 11th. So might as well come down pit road if you are him. And there is William Kerwin just kind of dragging the 07 back to pit road. Unfortunately, he was battling for the lucky dog position, will not pick it up. Trying to see who will be the lucky dog here, and we're getting word as the camera freaks out there that it will be the number 62 of Colin Ullery. So the first time we've brought up this graphic all season long, because I think this is the first time we've caught who the Brookstone Animal Hospital Lucky Dog Award is. But if you're in the greater Atlanta, Georgia area, make sure you check out our friends over at Brookstone Animal Hospital, brookstonevet.com, for all of your veterinarian needs. But that man right there, Colin Ullery, had that pit road mishap a little while ago, got that penalty, Drew, but he lives to fight another day. And considering we're only with 9 trucks on the lead lap, Ullery might not be in a bad spot.
Yeah, there's 18 trucks still out there though, so getting that lucky dog award is definitely not. It's not a bad thing to be on the lead lap. The problem is he's going to have to be incredibly efficient getting through a lot of the trucks that are not going to be on pace. But I mean, heck, maybe he does it. Maybe he does it well, and he's able to get up there. In worst case scenario, there's you finish. What will he finish? Probably 10th-ish, right around there, considering the trucks that are damaged on the lead lap that he'll probably get by. And maybe there's another caution, and then he's kind of at the tail end of the lead lap trucks. But certainly the 62 is not upset by getting that lucky dog award. But here we go, Peter. We're going to get the green flag with 4 to go. All bets are off. I think that the kindness that these drivers showed themselves prior to that last caution is out the window. Every move is going to matter. Every position is going to matter. There's going to be no quarter given to all of these 12 lead lap trucks with 4 to go.
Yeah, it will be a game of 10 miles left when the green flag comes back out. We're going to try and get a quick word with Mike Aiello up at the front of the field, but the pace car lights have turned off. And I'm seeing something a little bit interesting here, Drew, because Aiello is appearing to choose the outside line for this restart. A little bit of a surprise there. We've seen him mainly choosing the inside line for the restarts, but he's going to shake things up a little bit right here at the end. And look at Nathan Maurer, the 971 machine who has been in the hashtag Lurker gang all night long. Well, that 971 is now running inside the top 4, right there behind Aiello, and if he can get a good jump with Aiello, he might be able to even pull himself up into the top 3. Tristan Maher going to be the second truck on the inside groove. TJ Buck now back in the picture in the Buckies, number 84. He's going to be starting third truck on the outside line. The 2 of Justin White in the picture as well. Pace truck heads down pit road. 10 miles to go, just 4 laps at Daytona in the season opener here in the National Sim Racing Association, and Aiello gets a good jump up at the front, cuts down in front of Jordan Shepler. Maurer, he's going to slide back into 4th there, Drew.
Going to be really interesting to see if the change lane rule is still in effect, because that 74 and 13 certainly changed lanes before the start-finish line. It'll be interesting to see if those drivers do or do not get a black flag. If either of them do, that is going to be a massive, massive penalty, as what we shall see is now the 971 and Nathan Maurer makes a move to the high line. Will that number 2 of Justin White go with him? I think he will. Those 2 Simbox machines are teammates there on the outside line, so I anticipate that they'll work with each other. The question is, will anybody work with them? As the 2 almost makes contact with the number 17 machine, is now, Peter, just 3 to go.
3 laps to go, and contact, and the 971 is going around. They save it. How do they save that one? We stay green flag. That's going to cut down the front 3, down 2. Believe it or not, 3. That's how math works. Aiello, Shepler, Tristan Maher, are they the 3 that are going to be fighting this one out to the end of the race? We stay green flag. Back behind them, Justin White, Nathan Maurer, Matt Cherry, Adam Dama's in this group, Doug Milliner, Jeff Price, TJ Buck is sliding back in the number 84. Ullery, something's happening to Colin Ullery. Ullery's off the racetrack. We stay green flag. Let's quickly see if we can see what happened to some of these trucks back here towards the back of this group. On board here with Stan Hausman. Contact between TJ Buck and the number 23 machine, and Stan Hausman gets turned up into the wall. Dalton Hayes goes around, but they are off the racing surface. Drew, we stay green flag here at Daytona. And, of course, there was a rule last season. I think if it was more than 3 trucks, a caution flag would come out. But here this season, we're halfway down the backstretch with just 2 laps to go.
We are. Mike Aiello black flagged, though. That number 74 machine received a black flag with 2 to go. He will not be a race winner here tonight. It'll be between the number 13 and the 17 machine. The question is, will that 74 serve that black flag this time by? If he doesn't, that will be probably a disqualification, I would imagine. He does not, so the 74 risking it all here on this last lap. But it's essentially between the 13 and the 17 here, Peter.
And you called it. The 74 lane changing on that restart drop down. It is a rule here in the National Sim Racing Association. You're not allowed to change lanes until you get to the start finish line. I'm sure he's going to try and stay out there and protest it to let the league officials go back on the replay to see whether or not he did. But if that black flag stands, it is indeed, as you see Stan Hausman off the pace. It might be between these 2, Jordan Shepler and Tristan Maher. They're side by side here, Drew, coming through turn number 3 and 4. This is going to be a wacky one. Who's going to take home the checkered flag? Tristan Maher to the high side. He's got a huge shot, but here comes Shepler. There's 3 wide across the start finish line, and Shepler goes to victory lane. My, Nick Bradley called it earlier in the race. Shepler gonna win at Daytona.
0.020 seconds. What a finish. 3 wide with only 3 trucks in the lead pack there at the end. Couldn't ask for a better finish. I really thought Tristan Maher had it. And then all of a sudden that 13 surged ahead with the finish line in sight, and Jordan Shepler kicks off the 2021 B season with a victory here at Daytona.
My, what a finish here at Daytona. Fireworks going off on the backstretch. What a way to kick off the season. Fireworks are merited after that finish. A bunch of drivers now kind of pulling off the racetrack, but Jordan Scheffler, he's going to get to burn it down here on the front stretch. It says hard luck on the front, but no hard luck for the number 13 here tonight, taking home the checkered flag and potentially being the first driver to punch their ticket, Drew, into the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series chase at the end of the season. Wow.
Yeah, certainly not a bad thing to start your championship hopes off with a victory. I would think it's fairly unlikely that this 13 will in fact not be in the chase come later this year. A fantastic job on just capitalizing on opportunity. Did Jordan Scheffler do here tonight, and that results in probably the biggest track you can win at here in stock car racing at Daytona Super Speedway. A fantastic job by that number 13 machine.
Yeah, now he has to find out how to get to victory lane here at Daytona, done his burnouts. He's going to be one happy camper, that is for sure. Now, we are going to have to make sure that indeed that the number 74 of Mike Aiello will be receiving the black flag for his lane change right there, Drew. I'm not hearing anything of sorts, so we will make sure we'll go to the outer race admins and see if they have any further calls on whether or not. But hey, Jordan Scheffler, he ain't done celebrating. He's going to put on a show for the fans here on 3 Wide TV, Drew, and why not? Just the engine hasn't grenaded yet. I think that's the rite of passage. You have to kind of go until the engine grenades, I thought.
Yeah, I think as you said that, it might have grenaded that 13 engine. Yeah, I mean, a fantastic job. And again, a 3 wide finish. The end result, unfortunately, for that number 74 machine will not reflect it. But yeah, that 13, as long, yeah, I mean, again, I think the officials are going to review that restart, but and hopefully the 13's win holds up. But just a fantastic last few laps from those top 3 drivers.
Well, I can confirm that it is being reviewed right now by the race officials. They are chatting it over in the National Sim Racing Association hauler, so that might be a late call. But, Drew, let's see if we can have a chat with several other of these finishers up towards the front of the field. Let's see if we can start with tonight's runner-up, the number 17 machine, driven by Tristan Maher. Sometimes he ducks out a little bit quickly here on 3 Wide TV at the end of the race, but I'm sure he's hyped up out of this one. So, Drew, why don't you take it away with tonight's runner-up, Tristan Maher.
Tristan Maher, number 17 machine. Drew Eisman up here in the 3 Wide TV booth. You got a copy?
I got a copy, guys.
Well, certainly an eventful last 10 laps. Some chaos going on around you. Just kind of from the green flag to the checkered flag, give us a rundown of how that race went down for you.
So when the green flag dropped, normally my strategy is to kind of like lag back to try to miss all the action. But this time I kind of wanted to stay sort of towards the front, because I feel like if you're in front of it, then you don't have to avoid what's happening. It was a pretty tame race till about right after the last pit stop. Things definitely heated up more.
I mean, you say it was a tame race. From up here, it was a little bit less than tame, but what was your once that last restart essentially boiled down to yourself, that 13 and the 74. What was your mindset? What was your strategy trying to figure out your way to finish as well as you could?
So I was trying to lag back and get a run, because at that point it was really just me and the 13, because the 74 got a lane change penalty on the last restart. So he actually had a drive-through penalty called on him, which he was supposed to serve before the race ended. So basically, out in my head, it was me in the 13, and the 74 never ended up pulling off in a pit road. So my plan didn't really pan out because there was an extra truck that I wasn't expecting there. But I was going to try to lag back and get a run on the 13. And then I was hoping when the 74 stayed out, he was on the inside, and I was going to try to box the 13 in because I still know that it's really between me and him. And the 74 put it in the middle, so we ended up having to go 3 wide, and I kind of lost out on that deal.
Yeah, I mean, you did. You still brought home second. How much does a really good result like this? Now, granted, one position shy, I'm sure of where you certainly wanted to finish, but how meaningful and important is this second place finish to set you up for your aspirations later in this season?
Honestly, I'm happy with finishing with a mostly clean truck at Daytona. Really, anywhere in the top 10 basically is my goal. Every time I come to a super speedway, I try to stay out of trouble and keep the truck clean. It's really a battle of attrition, and I feel like we did good. I'm by no means not happy with second place. I just really wonder how things would have played out if there wasn't an extra truck there.
Yeah, and that certainly altered, or at least introduced a new dynamic to the finish of the race. But we have a ton of racing left: Atlanta, Iowa, Milwaukee, Texas, Watkins Glen, Bristol, Dega, LOR, Vegas, Dover, Michigan, Richmond, all in the regular season. I know that you excelled at the Roval last season. What track amongst those are you most looking forward to in the rest of the regular season?
Oh, I'm definitely looking forward to the road courses. Watkins Glen, I absolutely love Watkins Glen. It is such a fun track to drive. For some reason, I don't know why, but I feel like I'm more competitive at road courses than I am at regular ovals. I don't know why that is, honestly, but definitely the road courses. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, as a road course fan myself, I absolutely understand your sentiments, but a heck of a way to kick off the 2021 B season for that number 17 machine. Tristan, before we let you go, is there anybody that you would like to give a shout out to?
Yeah. First of all, I'm super excited for this 2021 B season. NSRA is a great league. They have a great group of administrators. I'd like to shout out my teammates, Jason Gracias, Garrett Gleason, helping me by spotting and stuff after I turned Gleason in the beginning of the race. Vinny Valvano was there too. I think that's it. Brought this Badcraft Chevrolet to a second place. Not a bad race.
Yeah, not a bad race indeed. Thank you for talking with us, Tristan, and we look forward to watching you the rest of the season.
You guys have a great night.
Thank you, you as well.
All right, well, that's going to do it with tonight's second place finisher. Now, one thing we can confirm here on 3 Wide TV is the fact that, sure enough, the black flag on Mike Aiello will stand. So our third place finisher will be the number 38 of Matt Cherry. Let's see if we can get a quick word with driver of the number 54 machine, number 38 on the scoring pylon, of course, driven by Matt Cherry. And Matt, you're with us now. I'll tell you what, I thought at one point that your night was done. That number 54 machine did not look good, but at the end of the race, you had enough pace to keep up with everyone, and you are walking away with a strong finish to start off the season.
Oh yeah, we got sent through the grass there on that first run. Luckily, I kept it straight and didn't hurt it any worse than I had to. But we got caught up in a few of them tonight, but we didn't hurt it enough to not be able to keep up.
Well, 2 nights in a row here on 3 Wide TV, Bud. You think you can keep this streak going?
I hope so. I mean, this truck, it's a lot more. The draft package we got here is a lot more difficult than what we had in the Xfinity. So I mean, it's a lot harder to keep up.
Well, hey, a really good finish for you here tonight, and finish both in the 2 races that we've run over the past couple of nights here on the channel. Next week, we go to the Atlanta Motor Speedway, 134 laps around Atlanta, 200 miles. What are your thoughts about Atlanta and the racetrack that gets dubbed Hotlanta?
I like Atlanta. It's a fun track. I just hope the truck ain't gonna be like loose on the exit, because if it's loose on the exit, it's going to be a long night.
That it will. Of course, Hotlanta, known for being very, very slick and loose. It is going to be a lot of fun, that is for sure. Great way to start off your season here, Matt. Of course, hitting the ground running. We got, of course, Atlanta next week, Iowa, Milwaukee, Texas, the Glen, Bristol, Talladega, Lucas Oil, Vegas, Dover, Michigan, Richmond before we make it into the Chase, Daytona, Homestead, North Wilkesboro, Auto Club, and Atlanta to round out the season. That's right, we're going to Atlanta twice. Any racetracks that really stand out to you this season?
I like Michigan. Michigan's a fun place. I actually ran a race there a couple days ago and was doing pretty good. But yeah, Michigan is one of my favorite tracks.
Well, I'll tell you what, Matt, it's going to be a long season, but I know a lot of people are watching for you to potentially walk away with the season title at the end of the year. You starting off on the right foot, but before I let you go, any shout-outs you'd like to give out?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout-out to my sponsors for letting me put them on the truck this season, because before the season started, we were looking like we weren't going to have anybody ride along with us, but we was able to pick Stay Tuned Sports up, and going to try to do the best we can with them on the car this year.
Absolutely. It's always a big deal when you have the sponsor of the series on your hood and bringing home the number 38 machine for a good run here tonight. But hey, great run. We will see you next week at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, Matt.
All right, I'll see you then. Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for tonight's third place interview with driver of the Stay Tuned Sports podcast with Jimbo Machine. But now time to go down to Victory Lane, where Drew Eisenman has caught up with tonight's Stay Tuned Sports podcast 250 winner, Jordan Shepler.
Jordan Shepler, winner of the Stay Tuned Sports podcast Truck Series 250. You got a copy.
Yeah, who would have thought that, right?
Yeah, a heck of a last few laps right there between the restart, the penalty to the 74, the 3-wide finish. How'd it go down out of your windshield?
Really, it was just a mad dash for position coming out of that restart. Honestly, I got to tip my hat off to the 74. Really, that was Mike's race to lose. He was up front all day, and he's tough to get around. So, I hate that he got the penalty, but I'll take the win for sure.
And you couldn't have started off the season better. It would take exceptional circumstances for you to not be in the chase come 13, 14 races from now. How does this change your strategy for the rest of the season, if at all?
I really don't think it does. I mean, I feel like every race you go out there, you got to try to finish as best as you can each and every race. I mean, every week's going to bring new challenges. You just got to find a way around those obstacles and keep going.
And Jordan, I think we've seen flashes of class topping pace from you throughout the races, but maybe not quite as regular as you would like. Is there a certain track type or specific track that you look forward to and you think you excel at?
I feel like every time I come to the super speedways, I do good. I feel like every time I come here, I always have a good qualifying session. So I love the super speedways. I mean, really, these races are, half luck, half, the other half you can go and chalk it up to luck as well. But I mean, I love coming to these super speedways, big tracks, racing them packs. Other than that, trying to get better at the short stuff. I really wish I had more time to put into it than what I do, but I just love coming out here every week and racing with these guys.
Well, it certainly is a lot of fun to watch. So, I mean, I guess I'll quickly run through the rest of the regular season races. We have Atlanta, Iowa, Milwaukee, Texas, Watkins Glen, Bristol, Dega, Lucas Oil, Vegas, Dover, Michigan, Richmond. You mentioned the restrictor plate tracks. We have Talladega in the regular season. Are there any other tracks amongst those that either you're looking forward to or you're really not looking forward to?
Really, I mean, I really like Atlanta. I love the racing there. It's really kind of a marathon more than anything. Anything that I'm not looking forward to is anything you got to turn right. I'm terrible whenever it comes to racing road courses. But like I said, I mean, each week's a new obstacle, so you got to go out there and do your best.
Well, I mean, you certainly did your best tonight, and we're looking forward to seeing you do your best for several more races throughout the 2021 B season. But before we let you go, first race winner this season, Jordan Shepler, is there anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank everybody watching at home. I know I got a lot of family that tuned into the race, so thanks everybody. Also, NSRA for putting on such a great league. I mean, I know it's not hard to put these on week in and week out, so I know they put in a lot of man hours into these leagues. So hats off to the admins that run this league. And also you guys up at 3YTV. You guys put on a great broadcast each and every week. Also, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Stay Tuned Podcast. Make sure you check those out. Those guys are really good, entertaining to listen to.
All right, Jordan. Well, thanks for talking with us. And again, congratulations on your victory and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you. Hopefully we can keep it up.
All right, well, folks, that is going to do it with our race-winning interview here tonight on the channel. And what a race it was all the way to the bitter end here tonight. But let's bring up the final race results here from Daytona International Speedway. It is going to be one wild season, that is for sure, here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. Jordan Shepler taking home the win. Tristan Maher going to come home in second. Matt Cherry going to finish in third. Nathan Maurer going to be coming home in fourth with Jeff Price in fifth. TJ Buck going to come home sixth. Justin White, Doug Milliner, seventh and eighth. Jeffrey Johnson Jr. and Mike Aiello with that penalty drew there for that lane change will be relegated to the 10th position, one lap down.
Vinny Valvano, once again, now we're talking all lap trucks. He'll finish 11th. Adam Dama in that 28/82 machine. Depending on if you're looking at timing and scoring or his paint scheme, will finish 11th or 12th, rather. Travis White finishes 13th. Colin Olery, who had a ton of speed tonight, unfortunately finishes 14th. Stan Houseman in 15th. Don't count that 39 out for the rest of the season. We saw what he could do last season in that number 39 machine. Josh Sobel, I think we're going to see good things out of that number 57 machine as the season goes on in 16th. Evan Bushbosser in 17th. William Kerwin Jr. in that number 07 machine in 18th. And then in 19th position, we have Jason Shue and Chris Darling in the number 11 MaxGrafix racing machine rounds out our top 20.
21st position tonight goes to Doug Neal in the number 77, who limped his very damaged truck around for quite a few laps, finishing 32 laps down. One lap in front of Brian Kaufman in the 01. Dalton Hayes, 23rd. Philip Scott, 24th. Jason Gracias in 25th. Nick Kessler, Garrett Gleason, 26th and 27th. Cody Brown, 28th. Monty Glover Jr. and John Canizaro Jr. round out our top 30. Those drivers involved in that very early accident in the opening 15 laps. Chip Hansen had connection issues and fell out. I believe the same thing happened to Randy Perdue here tonight, falling out on lap number 11 of the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast 250 here at Daytona. But like I mentioned, next week, Hotlanta. Drew, going to be fast. That mile-and-a-half racetrack always puts on a good show with the trucks, with how slippery It is. And I'm very much looking forward to what next week has to offer.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. Atlanta provided great racing last season. Almost a quasi super speedway in these trucks, at least on fresh tires. I think it's going to produce great racing. Hopefully, we don't have the attrition rate that we had here tonight, but I think it's going to be a fantastic 2021 B season here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series.
Absolutely. Want to give a big shout out to the series sponsors here, as well as one of the main sponsors that always jumps in here and sponsors the biggest mover of the race award, Taz Racing Customs. We can't go away before we give out that one. And the biggest mover of the race here tonight is driver of the number 2 machine. That is Justin White. Picked up 23 spots from 31st on the grid to 8th. So congratulations to Justin White picking up our first Taz Racing Customs award of the season. Make sure you check them out for all your custom diecast needs. Big shout out to, of course, craigsetupshop.co.uk for sponsoring the poll shootout, as well as MaxGrafix.co, our friends over at SimShots. Of course, I know we had Andrew Himmelman in the chat here tonight. He is Mr. SimShots himself, as well as BeerStreetJournal.com, of course, sponsoring the Grand National Series. We did not see a Beer Street Journal last call. We almost had a Beer Street Journal last call there towards the end of the race, but we did not see that here tonight. Might have to wait until Atlanta to see one of those. We'll, I'm sure, see some last calls by the end of the season, but it is a long way between now and the season finale, all the way in February 4th, 2022. Drew, lots of laps, lots of storylines. Glad to have race number 1 in the books here tonight on the channel. And folks, until we see you again here on 3Y TV, stay safe, and we shall see ya.